Welcome to Common Grounds, a connect group of Sagemont Church, Houston, Texas. Thank you for joining us as we see God put the pieces in place to prepare His people to become a kingdom. We hope you enjoy today's lesson.
So we're just really going to do a Bible study today and just walk through this, and then I'll give you like some insights and some notes of like how I do Bible studies. How about we just dig in, because that's probably the best way to go about it. We'll start with the last verse in Judges and then go through Ruth 1 through 5.
In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died when she was left with her 2 sons. These 2 Moabite wives, the name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. They lived there about 10 years. And both Mahlon and Chilion died, so that the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband.
So I kind of love this book. It's so small, and even that first passage is so small, but there's so much compact in it. It's kind of like cheese seeds, you know? They're real small. They don't have much flavor to it. You have to eat a lot to get full, but they're like compact with antioxidants and other good stuff for you. And it's just working out something good for you. And that's kind of what these little books are for. Don't read them too fast. You might miss it. So starting from here, the background, we see that they are still in the time of Judges. And from that first verse, everybody did what was right in their own eyes. So from the land they were at in Bethlehem, this is the land that God brought them to. Each tribe got split up after they were in the wilderness for 40 years. And God actually gave them their lands, and they're supposed to dwell there. So they weren't supposed to leave, but everybody did what was right in their own eyes. So this family right here, they actually left and went to Moab, which the Moabites actually had. So they were from Bethlehem, and then they traveled to this area, Moab, which is like east of the Dead Sea. Actually, and there's an interesting story to that, because the Moabites are from Lot's descendants, which was Abraham's nephew, and that was a really classy story that I'm not going to talk about, but if you don't know it, go back and read it. And actually, the area they were from, Sodom and Gomorrah, God actually turned that into a pillar of salt, and that's actually kind of this area, this Dead Sea, somewhere in there. I went there. It was really cool. You just float, literally. That's all you can do. You can't swim. I did try to swim, and then I got like the water in my eye, and I had to just sit there, and I was like, don't do it again. Just sit here. And you can't like take your fingers and like wipe you just kind of have to cry it out a little bit. And then I was so far back that I couldn't just get to the shore. I just had to float and take it. It's terrible, terrible times. So there was a lot of enemy between Israel and Moab at this time, but they still went there, and they took 2 wives. Another thing to note in the Bible is names. There's a lot of meaning in the names. I mean, we have a few right here, but this is mainly about Naomi, Ruth, and Boaz. In Hebrew, this is Naomi, and her name means pleasantness or beauty. And then Ruth, which is root in Hebrew, her name means friend or friendship. And then Boaz, I think that's how the translator said it. His name is in strength, so things to take note. And then this is my favorite, Bethlehem, where they're from. It's actually Bet-Lechem. Got to put a little whenever you see that letter. And Bet means house. Well, the Hebrew language in general, it's like pictograph, it's numbers, and then it's letters. So the original Semitic language would have been Bet, which is a tent. It would have been the pictograph. And then T was actually a picture of a cross. So I love this kind of stuff because God's in the details of even his letters. Even this house points to Jesus. And lechem means bread. So house of bread, where do we see house of bread at? I'm the bread of life. Bethlehem, where did Jesus come from? Bethlehem, house of bread. All right, so here in this passage that we just read, we saw that Elimelech moved his family to Moab. And 2 things to note is we don't really know if it was a consequence of him moving from the land that God had given them or not, but they assume it was that he lost his 2 sons and his own life. And Naomi and Orpah were both left as widows and childless. which was actually a big deal then because the child was supposed to carry on the name and take over the family, but she was actually left with nothing. And another thing to note is they were there about 10 years. I need another volunteer to read Ruth 1, 6 through 17.
Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the land of Moab, for she had heard in the land of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. So she departed from the place where she was, and her two daughters-in-law with her. And they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, Go, return each of you to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. May the Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted their voices and wept. And they said to her, No, but we will surely return with you to your people. But Naomi said, Return, my daughters, why should you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb that may be your husbands? Return, my daughters, go, for I am too old to have a husband. If I said, I have hope, if I should even have a husband tonight and also bear sons, would you therefore wait until they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is harder for me than for you. For the hand of the Lord has gone forth against me. And they lifted their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Then she said, Behold, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods, so turn after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, Do not urge me to leave you or turn back, following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me, and worse, if anything but death, parts you and me.
Okay, so I note in verse 6, Naomi, she heard that God had blessed the land again she was from, so like news travels fast, very gossipy, that's a whole other place, and she's hearing that God's now blessing them. They had left because there was a famine, and so another thing to note here is that Naomi, she could have stayed back. She could have just said, all right, I'm just going to stay here. I don't want to face the people that I left because it could have been embarrassing. I don't want to face what's going to come, but she chose instead to honor her God. And another thing to note is that these girls were these are Moab women, childless, but they loved her so much that they were willing to go with her anywhere. That speaks on Naomi's character. We can assume from this, she was a woman of God. She knew the Torah. She obeyed him. She obeyed her husband. Well, she followed her husband to this land, even though she probably may have even argued against it, because she does seem like a very, woman, a woman of God who wants to follow him and puts him first. And yeah, so that's a big thing to note there with them wanting to follow them. One commentator wrote that our life with God should make others want to come back to God just by looking at our lives. So how are we living? And it's a repetitive question, just something to think about. And also, them wanting to go to Israel was a big deal. The people hated them there. They were Moabites. There was animosity, and they had nothing to give, but they were still willing to move out there. And so, but I love this picture with Ruth when she's like, entreat me not to leave you or turn back from following you. Wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts you and me. It's like a strong bond. It's like just something like unbreakable. And I don't know, y'all. If my mom wanted to move back to Louisiana, I'd be like, nah, I'm not going nowhere. Another commentator wrote about this particular thing. 10 years of Naomi's compromise in Moab never made Ruth confess her allegiance to the God of Israel. Yet as soon as Naomi stood and said, I'm going back to the God of Israel, I'll put my fate in his hands. Ruth stood with her. If you think you'll persuade your friends or relatives to follow Jesus by your compromise, you're mistaken. I felt like that. It's a big gut punch. All right, so moving on, 18 through 22.
When Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. So the two of them went on until they went to Bethlehem. When they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the woman said, Is this Naomi? She said to them, Do not call me Naomi. Call me, is it Mara? For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me? So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her, to return from the country of Moab. They came to Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest.
Things to note, she renamed herself. I don't think this was her being, I don't know what I think actually. Dramatic, yeah, probably a little dramatic. But I also think it's noted, you should note that people were excited to see her back. She was gone 10 years, but they still knew who she was, and that's her, that again speaks of Naomi's character and how they felt about her. Again, back to us, what's your character like at work? What do people say about you? And it's just something to think about on your own. But it is an example for us to follow. And then the barley harvest is kind of cool. This whole book is also, I mean, it's the house of bread. And the harvest time is actually the 7 weeks before Shavuot, which is the Feast of Weeks, which we know as Pentecost. And so there's so much there with this book, just that alone. Like, we just see something happening in this book. What's going on? So we keep reading on to figure this out. So I guess I'll read the next one, 1 through 10. There was a relative of Naomi's husband, a man of great wealth, of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. So Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, "Please let me go to the field and glean heads of grain after him, in whose sight I may find favor." And she said to her, "Go, my daughter." Then she left and went and gleaned the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was the family of Elimelech. Now behold, Boaz came to Bethlehem and said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered him, "The Lord bless you." And then Boaz said to the servant who was in charge of the reapers, whose young woman is this?" So the servant was in charge of the reapers, answered and said, "It is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi in the country of Moab." And she said, "Please let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves." So she came and continued from morning until now, though she rested a little in the house. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "You will listen, my daughter, will you not? Do not glean in another field, nor go from here, but stay close to the young woman. Let your eyes be on the field which they reap, and go after them. Have I not commanded the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink from the young men have drawn." So she fell on her face, bowed down to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" Okay, so now we start talking about Boaz. We get a little description of him. Relative of Naomi, which means they had these Levitical laws that God had given them in the forest to provide for them from the future. Sometimes when you're reading the text, you read it in the time you're in, so we know we're in the time of Judges, but then you look back to the past to be able to look to look forward. And Leviticus 19:9-10 kind of explains what exactly this relative thing means. Does anyone want to read that actually? Leviticus 9 through 9-10.
"Now when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap to the very edges of your field, nor shall you gather the gleanings of your harvest. And you shall not glean your vineyard, nor shall you gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the needy and for the stranger. I am the Lord your God."
Okay, so Naomi and Ruth came back, and Ruth was now essentially going to be the provider. Naomi was in her old age, and this was kind of like a social assistance program that God actually provided for them to be able to eat and live and provide for the home. So, and we see even here Ruth asked, she asked Naomi first, if she can even go, if this is a good thing. She probably heard about it, and we don't know how much time they had been there. And then we get a little bit of hint of Boaz's character. He was a great man of wealth. He didn't leave during the famine. He stayed, and God blessed him for that. Doesn't mean we all get blessed when we stay through our trials, but something to note when you are going through a trial. I know sometimes I want to run away and do my own thing, but God calls us to stick it out, work through it, even though we don't understand exactly what we're going through that time. Never fun, but he's got good plans for us on the other side. I don't know what it looks like for you. I don't have a crystal ball or anything, but I know that I trust my God, and he's a good God, and he has something good in storage for all of you. Just gotta stick it out. He was a respected man too by the community. And back to that nosy thing, we see that all of the field workers, because he gets there and he says hello to his workers or whatever, and he looks at her and he wonders who she is. And they have a nice detailed report to give her: where she's from, who she's with, how long she's been in the field, that she's worked all day and only rested once. Once again, people are watching you when you don't think it. As Christians, we are supposed to stand out, but people do take notice of what you're doing. What are you doing? It matters. She did nothing wrong, so they couldn't give a bad report about her, though I'm sure they wanted to, because again, she's a Moabite and they hated Moabite. And so we note that. And in our jobs, we can do this the same. We go to work. You want to be the hardest worker. Don't worry about what the others are doing. You just got to focus on what God would have you do. He has you in that position for a reason. He puts you there. Whether it's a good job or bad job right now, he has you there, and just stick it out. Go to him, and I don't know, sometimes just all you can do is just pray it out. Okay, so another thing I would note on here too is after Boaz talked to Ruth, and he told her, don't glean in another field. Stay close here by the young woman, so that way she could meet people and get to know them and wouldn't be by herself. But also it says, so that he told his men not to touch her, which I think is kind of crazy. Apparently those were dangerous fields out there, that he had to order his men not to mess with her. So when she falls to the ground, like in verse 10, she says, so she fell on her face, bowed down to the ground, and said to him, why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? She knew who she was. She knew she wasn't welcome there. She knew she was in dangerous territory. Probably didn't have any friends. Who knows? People probably walked behind her and said things. In Israel, they were very vocal. They're very vocal people. I assume it's the same. It was the same back then, if not more. It was an oral culture. People weren't on their phones all the time. There was nothing to distract them. So that's why news traveled so fast from one city to the next. So I'm sure plenty of things were said to them. Actually, in fact, I can remember the first day when I got off the airplane and we went in there, and most people were senior citizens. And so they were crossing, in the airport, they were crossing the road to get to their bus, to get to our bus. And this guy just started honking at us while they were just crossing because he wanted us to move. So Moran, the tour guide, he went up to him. He was like, oh, he was so nice to us. He's like, oh, it's okay, it's okay. And then he turns around, get out of here. And it was so funny. I was like, oh. But much harsher tones. They do not hold back. New York harshness, it was great. So we can assume it was kind of the same with Ruth, that's why she fell to this compassion. Listen, y'all, we should all be falling to our face to God like this. It doesn't matter. It does matter. He came down and he took his life in order that you can be close to him. Whether you told a white lie, whether you've just had thoughts, whatever you've done, you've fallen from grace from God. And every one of us should have that same knee-jerk reaction to him from time to time for his mercy and his love on us. Otherwise, we head into a different place. Okay, so now Ruth 2:11 through 23. Can somebody read that one?
Boaz replied to her, all that you have done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband has been fully reported to me, and how you have left your father and your mother in the land of your birth, and came to the people that you did not previously know. May the Lord reward your work, and may your wages be full from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Then she said, I have found favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me, and indeed have spoke kindly to your servant. Though I am not like one of your female servants. And at mealtime Boaz said to her, come here, that you may eat of the bread and dip your piece of bread in the vinegar. So she sat and beside the reapers. He served her roasted grain, and she ate and was satisfied, and had some left. When she got up to glean, Boaz commanded his servants, saying, let her glean among the sheaves, and do not insult her. Also you are to purposely slip out for her some grain from the bundle, and to leave it so that she may glean, and do not rebuke her. So she gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. And she picked it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also took some out and gave Naomi what was left after she was satisfied. Her mother-in-law then said to her, where did you glean today? And where did you work? May he who took notice of you be blessed. So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked, and said, the name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz. Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, may he be blessed of the Lord, who has not withdrawn his kindness from the living and from the dead. Again, Naomi said to her, the man is our relative. He is one of our redeemers. Then Ruth and the Moabitess said furthermore, he said to me, you are to stay close to my servants until they have finished all my harvest. And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law Ruth, it is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, so that others do not assault you in another field. So she stayed close by the young women of Boaz in order to glean until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother.
So again, we see why Boaz answers why. He's showing her this kindness. Character matters. He knows what she did for her mother-in-law. It stands out. They came back to the city. Nobody else offered to help them out. She did, this foreign woman. And then as you go on further, you kind of see the kindness and this like friendship develop. Some commentators wrote that like maybe this is where we see the little whatever between them developing, because he invited her to go eat with them and dip the bread in the thing. And that was just not a thing that guys did with women back then. They just didn't sit with them and talk with them. It was a little different back then. Women, they didn't really, I mean, they were respected, but they weren't, their testimony didn't mean anything in their courts. I'm sure it was even harder for foreign women, and she was a foreign woman. Like even when in the Gospels, when Jesus talked to the Samaritan woman, the disciples they were surprised. They were confused about it because men just didn't talk to women. It just was a thing back then, culture. So we see that kind of kindness developing here. And then when they're eating together, she takes some, and then he even tells his men to actually, he doesn't say it to her, but he like tells them to give her, purposely leave extra barley. So she had a good day at work. And then when she comes back, Naomi takes notice of this. I think Naomi was pretty smart. She probably could pick up the hints of what was going on with that and then eating. So I'm sure right there it started turning the wheels in her mind too. And she would have known that he was a kinsman redeemer, because that was she knew the Torah, and that was just a very cultural, it was a very known thing in their culture. And so now we're coming at the end of this, we're at the end of the harvest. So we're at the end of the 7 weeks, the end of the Shavuot, and we're going into what, like the future again, would be Pentecost, when Jesus actually ascends to heaven. Something's happening here in Bethlehem, that there is something kind of big, but they don't know this at the time. They're just walking through it. I mean, none of our stories are going to include like the Messiah, but we all have our walks too. God's doing something. He cares about our details. He's doing something in our lives. We can't see the future. Sometimes he uses the past in our present and to work out our future. The next section is Ruth 3, 1 through 18. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, my daughter, shall I not seek security for you, that it may be well with you? Now Boaz, whose young woman you were with, is he not our relative? In fact, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. So pointing out that he's the relative, that he could be the next kinsman redeemer. She notes that. Naomi's kind of noting here too that I think it's been setting in, and she knows she needs to find her a spouse, somebody to take care of her, and she knows Boaz could. So that's why she's putting this together. Verse 3, therefore wash yourself and anoint yourself. Put on your best garment and go down to the threshing floor, but do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. So put yourself together. And she gives her instructions on what to do next. Then it shall be when he lies down that you shall notice the place where he lies, and you shall go in, uncover his feet, and lie down. And he will tell you what you should do next. And she said to her, all that you say to me, I will do. So she trusted her enough to do this. This is actually not a risque thing that people might think. In fact, back then, back then, actually, slaves would sleep under their servants' feet, and that's kind of what this sign was that she was doing. Is she was going to go there and she was going to give full submission under Boaz, and she did everything Naomi told her, which I feel like that would be some stinky feet to have to smell on. I personally wouldn't feel that. I'm not okay with that. So verse 6 says, she went down to the threshing floor and did according to that her mother-in-law instructed her. And after Boaz had eaten and drunk, his heart was cheerful. He went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain, and she softly uncovered his feet and laid down. I can tell you, it's quite smelly. They didn't have anything to cover their nose. Their smells with back then. Now it happened at midnight that the man was startled and turned himself, and there a woman was lying at his feet. Luckily he didn't kick her. And he said, "Who are you?" So she answered, "I am Ruth, your maidservant. Take your maidservant under your wing, for you are a close relative." That phrase, "take you under the wing," is used throughout the Bible. It's a phrase that has to do with being under the shadow of God's wings. He uses it in different Psalms, Ezekiel, and actually even today what they do is the men will take their shawls that they have, and when they do their prayers, they'll take their whole family and they'll cover them and they'll bring them in close and they'll pray over them. And it's a taking them under their wings for their protection, to cover them and to hold them. So that's like another phrase that's also, yes, it's pointing to Boaz, but it's pointing to a bigger truth, which is God. God is our wings. He takes us under our wings. And here, this is a picture of how we are with the Lord. God's story is between Jews and Gentiles. This is such a beautiful Jew and Gentile story. Here, Boaz is the Jew who's representing God. And here is our Gentile sister Ruth asking to be put under his wing. God also does the same thing with us. He takes us, he's the root. He's from the line of David. He's very Jewish, Jesus, and he takes all of us Gentiles under his wings. And as the pastor says, if you are not Jew, you a good job. So verse 10, then he said, "Blessed are you of the Lord, my daughter, for you have shown me more kindness at the end than at the beginning, and that you did not go after young men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you request, for all the people of my town know that you are a virtuous woman." We see virtuous women in Proverbs 31, and that's after all of this. Solomon actually wrote Proverbs, and so he was writing about his great-great-great-great-grandma. In a sense, verse 12, "Now it is true that I am a close relative. However, there is a relative closer than I. Stay this night, and in the morning it shall be that he will perform the duty of a close relative for you. If he will perform the duty of a close relative for you, good, let him do it. But if he does not want to perform the duty for you, then I will perform the duty for you. As the Lord lives, lie down until morning." So he didn't make her leave, so that's something to say there about the whole situation. It wasn't going to lead to anything else. It was not a scandalous thing. But also note that there was another redeemer that was closer, and Boaz is a righteous man, so he's not cutting corners. He's going to go handle this. He's going to go ask him first, going to do it the right way. God has an order. God loves order. He is a very orderly God and everything. So, and if he has a plan for you, just follow it. So yeah, he's going to go to the city gates, and we'll see this in a second. He's just following the order, God's order. Verse 15, also he said, "Bring the shawl that is on you and hold it." And when she held it, he measured 6 ephahs of barley and laid it on her. Then she went to the city. So a nice bag of excellent chocolates, basically. Take it home with you. Verse 16, when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, "Is that you, my daughter?" Then she told her all that the man had done for her. And she said, "These 6 ephahs of barley he gave me, for he said to me, 'Do not go empty-handed to your mother-in-law.'" So sweet. Mother-in-law said too. Then she said, "Sit still, my daughter, until you know how the matter will turn out, for the man will not rest until he has concluded the matter this day." Okay, so they're going to get to work. It's going to be quick. Also, kinsman redeemer in Hebrew, the word is goel. And it has the responsibility to do what is righteous for the family or something. What's deemed. And in a little extra, I think there's a passage in Deuteronomy 25, 5 through 10 that kind of explains it a little bit. Deuteronomy 25, 5 through 10.
If brothers dwell together, and one of them dies and has an unborn son, the wife of the dead man shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go to her and perform the duty of husband's brother to her. And the first son whom she bears shall succeed to the name of his dead brother, that he may not be blotted out of Israel. And if the man does not wish to take his brother's wife, then his brother's wife shall go up to the gates to the elders and say, "My husband's brother refuses to perpetuate his brother's name in Israel. He will not form the duty of a husband unto me." Then the elders of the city shall call him and speak to him, and if he persists, saying, "I do not wish to take her," then his brother's wife shall go up to him in the presence of the elders and pull his sandal off his foot and spit in his face. He shall answer and say, so shall it be done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. And the name of his house shall be called in Israel, the house of him who had his sandal pulled off.
Okay, so that's how they made agreements at the city house, and they took their sandals off and did that. And that's like sets us up for this, and this is why he's not cutting corners, because there's a closer relative. And I'm just going to read through because I'm already over time. So last chapter, starting at 4 verse 1. Now Boaz went up to the gate and sat down. The gate is where they have like the courts and the political, all of that arena there. The high prominent men sat there, and then they handled all matters. It happened in 24 hours. You didn't have to wait weeks to go to court, right then and there. And behold, the close relative of him of whom Boaz had spoken came by. So Boaz said, "Come aside, friend, sit down here." So he came aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city, that 10 is kind of a big thing in the Jewish tradition for men, and said, "Sit down here." So they sat down. Verse 3, then he said to the close relative Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, "Sold a piece of the land which belonged to your brother Elimelech. And I thought to inform you, saying, buy it back in the presence of the inhabitants and the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not redeem it, then tell me that I may know, for there is no one but you to redeem it, and I am next after you." And so the guy said, "I will redeem it." But Boaz didn't mention Ruth yet. He didn't give all the fine print details yet. You know, those little things that are at the bottom of your contract. So then, clever. And I'm sure Naomi and Ruth were sitting there like, "Oh man, he said he's going to take it." So then Boaz is like, hit him with the left, and he says, "On that day, you buy the field from the hand of Naomi. You must also buy from Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to perpetuate the name of the dead through his inheritance." They want to keep the name going for that land. That was a kinsman's redeemer. And a close relative said, "I cannot redeem it for myself lest I ruin my own inheritance." It's a selfish reason. It had nothing to do with that. He didn't want her. He didn't want his name to be tainted. And therefore, his name's not even written here. So that's how down this was looked upon. They didn't even put his name. So that guy says, "You redeem my right of redemption for yourself, for I cannot redeem it." Verse 7, now this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning the redeeming and exchange, to confirm anything. One man took off his sandal and gave it to another, and this was a confirmation of Israel. Nobody came up and slapped him on this one, but that's okay. It's done. Maybe that's because of her spit, whatever it was supposed to be. Verse 8. Therefore the close relative said to Boaz, "Buy it yourself." So he took off his sandal. And verse 9, and Boaz said to the elders and all the people, "You are the witnesses this day, and I have bought all that was Elimelech's and all that was Shilon's and Mahlon's from the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the widow of Mahlon, I have acquired as my wife to perpetuate the name of the dead through his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among the brethren and from his position of the gate. You are witnesses to that." And all the people who were at the gate and the elders said, this is cool, like they all just broke out and said this, "We are witness to the Lord. Make this woman who is coming to your house like Rachel and Leah." That was Jacob's wives, who built the 12 tribes, the two who built the house of Israel. "And may you prosper in Ephrath and be famous in Bethlehem." Like, what's this about? Why are they being famous all of a sudden? Verse 12, "May your house be like the house of Perez, who Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring which the Lord will give you from this young woman." So like basically the Holy Spirit just broke out in these people and blessed them, which was probably wild in their sight. And they probably had no idea. Verse 13, so Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and then the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Verse 14, the woman said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a close relative. May his name be famous in Israel, and may he be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For the daughter-in-law who loves you, who is better to you than 7 sons. 7 is a big number. It's the number of completion. It's a huge deal that they're saying this one woman is better than 7 sons to her. Then Naomi took the child, laid her on her bosom, and became a nurse to him. I don't really understand that, but okay. Verse 17, also the neighbor woman gave him a name, saying, "There's a son born to Naomi," and they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now this is the genealogy of Perez. Perez begot Hezron. Hezron begot Ram, and Ram begot Amminadab. Amminadab begot Nahshon, and Nahshon begot Salmon. And then Salmon begot Boaz, and Boaz begot Obed. And Obed begot Jesse. Jesse begot David. Lots of begots. But they're very important begots because that's the line of the Messiah. And there's some very important names in that. Boaz was actually from Rahab, who was also a Gentile woman, who was also a prostitute. Perez from Tamar, which is also another very classy story that you can go read yourselves. But in all of this, God had a plan. Like, Naomi left. She lost everything, probably never felt like things were going to get better. And then by being obedient to God, going back to her homeland, she gained a daughter. She ended up gaining another son, and she left full. And she's a part of the line of Messiah that points to what everything we're doing, everything we have. We also can look to this and do the same. It doesn't matter where you've been, what you do. When you repent and you turn to the Lord, He can also turn everything around for you. It doesn't, whatever your past looks like, and He can give you a future that is better than anything you can draw up or imagine or think of. There's completion in it. So
thanks for listening. If this week's message helped you, feel free to share it with a friend. At Common Grounds, we are striving to help people grow in their faith and build community by finding common ground in Christ Jesus. Until next time, hope y'all have a great week.